Rich dudes are not having an easy time digesting Senator Elizabeth Warren's proposal to implement a wealth tax. In fact, they're crying about it, which means it's time for another edition of When Rich Men Cry.
I care. That's it.
Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax would not impact the vast majority of Americans. It would only impact the uber rich. In fact, the uber rich, people who have a net worth of $50 million and above that, would get taxed 2%. And when it comes to people who are worth $1 billion or more, they would be taxed at 3%. Now, it's not an unreasonable tax, especially when you consider the fact that many of these people have skirted paying their fair share of taxes for quite some time now, and that has contributed to the ever-growing inequality in this country. And so when Elizabeth Warren first proposed this back during the 2020 Democratic primaries, our good friend Leon Cooperman cried on CNBC, as you saw in that intro video. And now that she's proposing it again, although it's a much more updated version given the economic situation we find ourselves in during this pandemic, the temper tantrum just continues, beginning with Grover Norquist, who's worried about the IRS enforcement component of it because he just thinks this is a way of punishing good, hardworking millionaires and billionaires in this country. Take a look.
Grover, I know you hate all taxes, but is there a way to increase tax revenue and to more fairly tax the wealthy, recognizing that I know that you don't like the wealth tax unto itself?
Sure, if you want to, you reduce the capital gains tax. Every time we've reduced the capital gains tax rate, higher income people have paid more in taxes and you've had more growth and there've been more jobs for everybody. So if you're into hate and envy, go ahead and do the wealth tax. There's a lot of selective discussion about where the wealth tax has succeeded. 15 countries have put in a wealth tax. 11 got rid of them because they discovered how dysfunctional it was. One of the things that people should check on is in this legislation that Warren has put forward, she wants $100 billion more, $100 billion more in enforcement.
He's upset about that because he's worried that wealthy people, meaning people who have a net worth of above $50 million, are gonna have to deal with the same audits that people getting paid starvation wages have been dealing with, as the IRS has focused most of their attention on auditing the poor as opposed to the wealthy. And the reason why that's the case, Francesca, is of course, throughout the years, you have Republican administrations, Republican lawmakers cutting off resources to the IRS, which they would desperately need in order to audit the complicated tax filings of this country's millionaires and billionaires, who I would venture to say, some of those people probably have committed tax fraud in order to prevent paying taxes, but they don't focus on that. The IRS doesn't have the money to do it. So Senator Warren's proposal includes funding for the IRS in order to be able to enforce not just the wealth tax, but enforce the current tax laws that we have now.
I love how Grover Norquist is imagining Michael Moore's idea of creating cops, but for white collar criminals and chasing people down in the streets. And if only, once again, don't threaten us with a good time, because we on the left, we want to see that kind of entertainment. But no, it is just, it's to actually get you to make good, because we know you're litigious and, lawyered up and have, you don't the billionaires aren't working with TurboTax, you know what I'm saying? They've got a whole other army of accountants who are helping them skirt laws and fudge the numbers. And so that's what it is. Sadly, you need more money to enforce tax code on the rich, because they're the biggest violators of the tax code. So that's why. But also, my man's got no ideas for how to make the tax code more fair. The question was, is there a way we can tax the wealthy that you would approve of? And he was like, no, you get rid of capital gains taxes because we're job creators. Oh God, buddy. How's that worked out for the country?
Grover Norquist is the worst when it comes to this particular issue. He has dedicated his entire life, his entire career to doing away with taxes. And that has led to a lot of the inequality we see in the country, a lack of opportunity for people, just completely gutting the social safety net. And the thing that I would point to is take a look at what the current capital gains taxes are. It's not the same as income taxes. I mean, these people are not paying a lot in capital gains tax, about 15%. And so for him to say, like, his solution is to do away with the capital gains tax, which is too low to begin with. It's too low. It should be increased. Capital gains, it's people investing their money, usually millionaires and billionaires, investing their money in the stock market, seeing a return in that investment, and then getting taxed much less on that income, 15% in most cases. Like, it's ridiculous that he thinks that that's too high, but also I love that he's crying about the possibility of having to deal with the IRS doing its job when it comes to the wealthy and the privileged. And then he mentions hate and envy, and that's really what I want to focus on. I wouldn't say that it's envy. I wouldn't even say that it's hate, but is there anger toward the wealthiest people in this country? Yes. And I think that anger is justified because those individuals would not be as wealthy as they are had it not been for their workers, had it not been for the labor that overproduces and then gets underpaid, right? They're the ones who have decided to hoard all the wealth, who have decided to pay themselves back by buying shares of their own stock in order to artificially inflate the value. I mean, these are people who have purposely, intentionally exploited labor in this country. And while their workers are demanding a fair wage, while their workers are demanding decent working conditions, while their workers just want to provide for themselves and their families and live a life of decency, you have clowns like Grover Norquist pretending as if the real victims in this country are the people who have been completely ignored by the IRS, are the people who have been skirting paying taxes in this country, the people who have done anything and everything to skirt regulations to ensure that our food is safe to eat. I mean, that's a story we'll get to later in the show. And to make them out to be the victims, I think is just beyond pathetic.
You're just jealous of their private jets, Anna. That's all I'm hearing. I'm hearing like you're just mad at us because you can't be us, or hate us because you can't be us, whatever the line is. I think it's also just like, what was the money, the breakdown for what 2 or 3% would be? It's like, oh no, you've got to lay off some of your staff in St. Bart's. Such a drag. Of your second home, that's your fourth vacation home. Like, this is what we're actually talking about. It's nothing. It's a little piece of dandruff on Bill Gates's, whatever, $1 million suit. Like, this is not important to them. It's something they can let go of. But once again, we talked about in this segment, like, rich people can't imagine, they're so afraid. It is the absurdity, I think, of when people misunderstand racial justice to be like, you're gonna come for my freedoms. Like, no, that's not what equality is. Like, how can you be so afraid of just a little bit more fairness? Just a little, not a lot, just a little bit. And really comes down to these people can't imagine ever living on minimum wage. These are, Grover Norquist would commit, like he would kill himself before he would have to live on minimum wage. He would kill, and meanwhile, poor people in this country, working people, are also the most generous. Like, anyone who's like been in a working class family, anyone who knows, anyone who's seen the amount of solidarity in times of need, anyone who's been to other countries also, and like, that's where the actual solidarity comes from, not from the ultra wealthy. But these guys can't even imagine living like that.
And just to really highlight how this inequality works, as you all know, taxes were already low for corporations and the rich in this country, but thanks to Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts, he actually lowered taxes for the rich in this country further. And so the year following 2017, data indicated that some of the most well-known and successful corporations paid absolutely nothing in federal taxes. So for instance, Netflix and Amazon paid no federal taxes in 2018. Other companies on that list include Chevron, Delta Airlines, Eli Lilly, General Motors, Goodyear Tire and Rubber, Halliburton, IBM, JetBlue, Principal Financial, Salesforce, US Steel, and Whirlpool. Like these are all companies that, remember, this is in 2018, this is pre-pandemic. They're doing all right. They're doing all right. They're doing real well. And there's no reason why they shouldn't be paying anything in federal taxes. But the tax law was written as such. And did they create more jobs? No, they did corporate stock buybacks, which we'll get to in just a second. Corporate tax collections in 2018 declined 31% from the previous year. This is the first year on record that corporate tax collections have fallen so precipitously during a period of economic expansion. It's just, that's what's going on, okay? But they're the victims, guys, okay? Grover Norquist wants you to believe that they're the victims. Can you please stop hating and envying us? That's Grover Norquist. He also thinks that they should be allowed to do corporate stock buybacks. Let's go to the next video.
It does help the stock rise. Why is that so bad for shareholders? For pension plans that own the stock, for state retirement plans that own the stock. You reduce the float, earnings per share goes up, the stocks go up, everybody's doing better. Income inequality narrows. We're all winning, Senator. We're all winning. Come on. What do you mean, come on?
Come on, this is nothing but paper manipulation. Everybody's doing better. Listen to yourself. Nothing about the business changed. They're still turning out the same number of widgets at the same cost and selling them to the same customers. Nothing changed, but they got a little fluff and buff in their stock. And how did they do that? By taking their excess cash and saying, geez, we can't figure out anything to do with this cash. We're not going to give it back to our investors.
You're going to put the government in
the investment decision that the only investment in America that makes any sense.
Senator, you're going to put the governor in the business of managing the balance sheets for these companies that are trying to do what they think is right for their capital structure.
Oh, if you put it like that, then yes, that's what the government should absolutely do. Because whenever it comes to their so-called capital structure, of course, they're more interested in paying themselves than paying their workers and doing the quote unquote right thing, as Joe Kernan mentioned there. And I apologize, I mix up my white male wealth hoarders in this country. That was not Grover Norquist, that was Joe Kernan from CNBC's Squawk Box. And he lied in that segment about how absolutely devastating stock buybacks really are. He tried to make it seem like it's a great thing, Francesca, but just a few excerpts from a piece written in the Harvard Business Review about how disastrous corporate stock buybacks are for the economy. And let me just note that there was $1.1 trillion spent on corporate stock buybacks in 2018. Stock buybacks made as open market repurchases make no contribution to the productive capabilities of the firm. Indeed, these distributions to shareholders, which generally come on top of dividends, disrupt the economic, or I should say, disrupt the growth dynamic that links the productivity and pay of the labor force. The results are increased income inequality, employment instability, and anemic productivity. You want to know why? Because they take the money from their tax savings and they just try to do all sorts of little tricks with the stock market so they can make more money for themselves. They don't create new jobs. They don't reinvest in their companies. They don't invest in their own workers. They don't do any of that. They just try to find ways to take advantage of a system that's rigged against workers to make themselves wealthier. And then you have a clown on CNBC telling you that it's a great thing, that you should just shut up and take it.
I mean, what's crazy is that, Elizabeth Warren, when consistently offered the ability to say whether, she's a democratic socialist or like socialist ideas, is like, no, I don't, I'm a capitalist. And you're like, oh, okay, and once again, a lot of people who are calling for anything from breaking up big tech to not allowing these stock buybacks are like, no, I'm a through and through capitalist. I just believe that the system needs to have a little wee bit of regulation. I believe like Warren is all about breaking up Amazon because she's like, it creates more capitalist competition. So for all the, like free market heads out there who somehow are, on the side of Grover Norquist here and others, like remember, this is not what the free market was intended to do. This is not the invisible hand of the market. This is not working out. This is gaming a system that has been wide open for fraud, and allowing your accountants and your stockbrokers to make you even more money that you didn't earn. That's all it is. So again, it's not radical, but we have to keep on saying it over and over and over again that none of this is actually socialist, even if you are a democratic socialist.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.